I watched a merchant lose everything on a Tuesday. By Friday, he'd reclaimed it all. What I taught him took 3 minutes to say. What happened after took the rest of his life to understand. His name was David, a weaver in the old quarter whose hands, once nimble and sure, now shook with a palsy of fear. A rival, slick with envy and deceit, had ruined his reputation with a whispered lie that spread like fire through dry grass. His suppliers turned him away. His customers crossed the street to avoid his gaze. When he came to me, his shoulders were slumped under the weight of a world he no longer recognized. He hadn't slept in 4 nights. His wife, he said, had stopped looking at him with love and started looking at him with pity, a far crueler fate. I taught him something that took less time than brewing a cup of tea. It wasn't a prayer. He'd exhausted his knees on the cold stones of the temple. It wasn't positive thinking. His mind had become a fortress against hope. It was a law, a principle of creation so fundamental that the architect of souls had woven it into the fabric of reality itself, yet somehow it had vanished from every tradition, every scripture, every school of thought I had ever studied. It was a secret hidden in plain sight. 3 days later, I saw him standing in the market square. The shaking in his hands was gone. He stood taller. The rival, the one who had destroyed him, had been exposed by a chance remark from a disgruntled servant. He had not only apologized publicly, but had offered restitution that more than covered David's losses. But that wasn't the miracle. The miracle was David's face. He wasn't smiling in triumph. He wasn't sneering in victory. He looked calm. He looked like he had remembered something essential. Something about who he actually was before the world told him he was a failure. What I am about to share with you was never suppressed by some shadowy council. It was not burned in a great library by conquering armies. It was simply forgotten in the harsh light of day. It was lost when living traditions became rigid institutions. It was misplaced when the vital, breathing wisdom of the heart became words carved in stone, studied with the mind but no longer embodied by the soul, when the voice became scripture, and scripture became something to argue over rather than live by. You are here listening to these words for a reason. There's something in your life right now, a door that will not open, a wound that will not heal, a question that will not quiet itself in the lonely hours of the night. There is a version of yourself you're trying to become, but you cannot seem to reach it. That friction, that longing, that sacred dissatisfaction. It did not bring you here by accident. It is the homing signal for forgotten things. It is how lost wisdom finds its way back into the world, through people who are finally ready to remember. My name is not important. Think of me as a keeper, a chronicler of things that fell through the cracks of history. I learned what I know not from books, but from an old woman who lived in the salt flats. A woman whose voice was like the rustling of dry leaves, and whose eyes held the patience of stone. She was the last in a line that stretched back to a time before our histories were written down. Learning from her cost me my youth. It cost me the comfort of certainty. It cost me everything I thought I knew about how the world worked. If you stay with me for the next 40 minutes, I will not just tell you what was lost. I will show you how to reclaim it. Not through belief alone, for faith without action is a ship without a sail. Not through discipline alone, for effort without grace is a well without water. You will reclaim it through something simpler and far older. Through remembering what you were created to be before anyone told you what you should be. But before I reveal the first key, the first healing code, you need to understand what happened to the first person I ever dared to teach it to. A woman who taught me more about grief than I ever wanted to know. She arrived 3 hours before dawn, carrying a letter she had written to herself 10 years prior. Her name was Alara, and she was a potter. There was a single stark white thread woven into the cuff of her black sleeve, a deliberate imperfection that drew the eye. Her grief was not a cloak she wore. It was the air she breathed. It had settled into the lines around her mouth and the permanent, weary slump of her shoulders. Her son had been taken by a fever 2 winters ago, and, as she told me, time does not heal all wounds. It simply teaches you to live with the amputation. She had heard of me from a cousin. who spoke of my teacher in hushed, skeptical tones. Elara was not here for a miracle. She was here for an ending. She wanted permission to stop fighting, to let the great grey sea of her sorrow finally pull her under. She handed me the letter. It was written in a joyful, looping script, the words of a younger woman full of plans and laughter. "I don't know who this person is anymore," she whispered, her voice a dry rasp. "And I don't think I care to find her again. This is a feeling you may know. The sense that part of you has died and you are merely a ghost haunting the ruins of a life that once was. You look at old photographs and see a stranger smiling back at you." That was Elara. She had come to me not for healing, but to have her despair validated. I let the silence sit between us for a long time, the only sound the crackle of the fire in the hearth. The smell of wood smoke and damp wool filled the small room. Finally I looked at her, not with pity, but with a deep and solemn respect for the weight she carried. "The one who spoke light into being did not create you for this," I said softly. Her eyes, dull with pain, flashed with a spark of anger. "Then the one who spoke light into being is cruel. I have prayed, I have begged, I have offered bargains to the heavens, until my throat was raw. The silence I received was my only answer. I leaned forward. The old woman in the salt flats had taught me this first. That is because you are praying from the wrong position. You are praying as a beggar from a place of lack. The divine hand does not respond to begging. It responds to recognition. You were given a voice, not to plead, but to declare." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "Declare what? That my heart is a wasteland? That my life is over? That is the only truth I have left." "No," I said, my voice firm but gentle. "That is a fact. It is not the truth. The fact is what has happened. The truth is what you were created to be. For 2 years, you have spoken the facts of your sorrow over and over again, reinforcing their reality every day. You have honored your grief. You have built it a temple. Now I am asking you to speak a single sentence of truth." She stared at me, her suspicion a palpable thing in the air. "What sentence?" "I will not give you the words," I told her. "They must be your own, but it must be a declaration of what is true about you at your core, beneath the grief, a truth that was true before your son was born and remains true after he is gone. Go home, Elara. Find that one sentence. Speak it aloud in an empty room, not as a hope, not as a wish, as a statement of what is. Speak it from the place in you that existed before the wound." She looked at me as if I were mad. She had come for solace, and I had given her a task. She had come for an ending, and I had pointed her toward a beginning she did not want. She stood up, her movements stiff. She left the 10-year-old letter on my table. She did not say thank you. She did not say goodbye. She simply walked out into the pre-dawn chill, leaving the scent of rain and sorrow behind her. I thought I had failed her. I thought I would never see her again. And for 3 days I was right. On the morning of the 4th day she returned. I barely recognized her. The profound slump in her shoulders had lessened, as if a great weight had been partially lifted. The dullness in her eyes was still there, but it was different. It was the quiet of a calm sea after a storm, not the dead stillness of a stagnant pond. She carried a small clay bowl, freshly fired. It was simple, elegant, and perfect. She set it on the table next to her old letter. "Something happened," she said, her voice no longer a rasp, but quiet and clear. She did not look at me, but at the bowl. "I did what you said," she continued. "It felt foolish. I sat in my son's empty room and felt nothing. I tried to think of a truth. Was I strong? No. Was I resilient? No. I felt like none of those things. I almost gave up. And I remembered something he said to me once when he was very small. He had made a drawing, and I told him it was beautiful. He said, 'I know. My hands know how to make beautiful things.'" She paused, tracing the rim of the bowl with her finger. So that was it. That was the only truth I had left. I stood up, and I said it, out loud. To the empty room. My hands know how to make beautiful things. I said it again and again. I didn't cry. I didn't feel a great shift. I just said it. And I went to my workshop for the first time in 2 years. She fell silent. I waited. That night, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper, I had a dream. It was the first dream of my son where I wasn't reliving his last moments. In the dream, he was older, young man. He was standing in a field of wildflowers, and he was smiling. He didn't speak. He just looked at me, and I understood. I understood he was well, and I understood that it was all right for me to be well, too. When I woke up, the air in my house felt different, lighter. She finally looked at me, her eyes filled with a question that was deeper than words. What was that? What did I do? You didn't do anything, Nilara, I told her. You simply stopped doing what was hurting you. For 2 years, your words reinforced the reality of your pain. You spoke of emptiness, and your life became empty. You spoke of endings, and your world ended. When you finally spoke a single foundational truth, you gave reality a new instruction. You reminded it of your purpose. The Creator spoke everything into being with a word. You were made in that image, not as a source of creation, but as an echo of that divine voice. Your words are not requests sent up to the heavens. They are tuning forks that cause the world around you to resonate with the note you strike. This is the first code, the law of sacred speech. It is not about pretending you are not in pain. It is not about lying to yourself. It is about finding a deeper, more fundamental truth that exists alongside the painful fact, and giving that truth your voice. Elara's pain was real, but the skill in her hands was also real. The pain was a visitor, the skill was her essence. By speaking her essence, she didn't erase the pain, but she changed its power. She reminded herself, and the universe, that she was more than her wound. You have felt this. A moment when you made a decision and spoke it aloud, and suddenly, serendipitously, doors began to open. The time you declared, I am done with this, and the strength to walk away finally arrived. That was not a coincidence. That was you, for a brief moment. Remembering the creative power you carry, you were remembering how to use the tool you were given at birth, your voice. Elara had mastered sacred speech, the first and most fundamental of the codes. But there is a power even greater, the silence that contains all words. And to understand that, I must tell you about the woman who healed an entire family without speaking a single prayer. Before we journey into that silence, let me give you the map for what Elara discovered. This is not theory. This is a practice. You can use this tonight, and I urge you to do so. This single act, practiced with sincerity, can begin to reorder your world in ways that will surprise you. It's a process of 3 steps. The first step is the position of stillness. Before you speak, you must be still. This is not just physical stillness. Find a place where you will not be disturbed for 5 minutes. Sit, close your eyes, and take 3 slow, deep breaths. Your mind will be a storm of thoughts, worries, plans. Do not fight them. Simply observe them, like clouds passing in the sky. Your goal is not to empty your mind. That is a myth. Your goal is to find the quiet space behind the thoughts, the part of you that is watching the thoughts. That is the seat of your true self. The ego speaks from the storm. The soul speaks from the quiet. You must find the quiet. The second step is the declaration of truth. Once you feel even a glimmer of that inner stillness, you will speak your declaration. But how do you find the words? It's simpler than you think. Ask yourself this question. What is one thing that is true about me that does not depend on my job, my relationships, my health, or my bank account? It might be, I am resilient. It might be, I am a person who loves deeply. It might be, like Elara, my hands know how to make beautiful things. Or even, I am a child of the divine and I am worthy of peace. The words must feel true in your bones, even if your current circumstances scream otherwise. This is the key. You are not describing your current state. You are declaring your essential nature. Now speak it aloud, just once. Hear the words in the room. Feel the vibration in your throat and chest. Notice the resonance. That is not just sound. That is an act of creation. The third and final step is the release. This is where most people fail. After they speak, they immediately start looking for results. They check for signs. They worry if they did it right. This is like planting a seed and then digging it up every hour to see if it has sprouted. Once you have spoken your declaration, you must release it entirely, hand it over to the architect of souls. Your job is to strike the tuning fork. It is the Creator's job to orchestrate the symphony. Trust that the word has been sent out and will not return void. Go about your day, or go to sleep, with a quiet, confident expectation. Do not look for the miracle. Let the miracle find you. When others have done this, they report subtle shifts at first. A chance encounter, an unexpected phone call, a sudden insight that resolves a long-standing problem. The changes often come not in the form you expect, but in the form you need. Practice this for 7 days. One declaration, once a day, from a place of stillness, followed by a complete release. This alone could change everything. But there's more, because what I'm about to share next builds upon this foundation and reveals why sometimes the most powerful declaration is no declaration at all. Her name was Lena, and she arrived with her entire family in tow, a husband whose face was a mask of exhaustion, and 2 young children who seemed to vibrate with a nervous energy that was painful to watch. Lena herself was the calm center of their storm. She had a long, thin scar above her left eyebrow that was the only part of her that seemed tense. It would twitch almost imperceptibly when she was listening intently. Their problem was not one of tragedy, but of 1,000 tiny cuts. Their home, she explained, was filled with a constant, low-level anger. Fights erupted over nothing. The children were always sick with minor ailments. Sleep offered no rest. Our house feels haunted, her husband Marcus said. I think we are the ghosts. They had tried everything. They had moved furniture, burned sage, sought counsel from elders. Nothing touched the oppressive atmosphere that clung to their lives. They came to me expecting a ritual, an incantation, a complex set of instructions. Lena sat before me, her hands folded in her lap, and her silence was more potent than her husband's desperate litany of complaints. I taught Alara, the potter, to speak. I told them, I am going to teach you to be silent. Marcus looked confused. But we need to do something. We need to fix this. You have been doing for years, I replied, my gaze fixed on Lena. Your doing is born of anxiety. Your actions are born of fear. You are trying to fight the darkness. I am asking you to become the light that makes darkness impossible. I turn to Lena. You are the anchor of this family. Your inner state sets the tone for the entire household. They all resonate with you. That scar above her eye twitched. She knew it was true. What do I do? She asked, her first words since they had arrived. For the next week I instructed you will do this. Twice a day, once at dawn and once at dusk, you will go into the main room of your house alone. You will not pray for peace. You will not ask for the anger to leave. You will not visualize a positive outcome. You will do only one thing. You will sit, and you will feel a profound sense of gratitude for the love that created this family in the first place. You will remember the feeling of your wedding day. You will remember the first time you held your children. You will not think about these memories. You will embody the feeling of them. You will let that silent gratitude fill you until it overflows. Your only job is to become a vessel for that feeling. Do this for 15 minutes. Say nothing. Ask for nothing. Just be that. She agreed. It was a strange teaching. No words, no actions, just a state of being. As she left, her family trailing behind her, a small boat of anxiety pulled in the wake of her quiet resolve. She applied the teaching with meticulous faith. That first evening she sat in her living room, her mind raced. The anxieties of the day screamed for her attention, but she persisted, gently turning her focus back to that core feeling of love, that foundational gratitude. She didn't fight the noise, she simply allowed the feeling of gratitude to become a deeper, more resonant note beneath it. She did it again at dawn. 3 days later, she returned to see me, alone this time. The scar above her eyebrow was still. "It's gone," she said. "What is gone?" I asked. The pressure, the anger. It's just dissolved. Last night, Marcus and I talked for hours, for the first time in years, without a single sharp word. My son, who has had a cough for a month, slept through the night and woke up clear. It's not just that things are better, it's that the air is different. She looked at me, her eyes wide with awe. I didn't say a word. "Oh, this is the second code," I explained, "the law of resonance. Your inner state is not a private experience. It is a broadcast. It is a vibration that emanates from you and creates a field around you. When you are in a state of anxiety and fear, you are broadcasting chaos, and your environment, your home, your family must resonate with that chaos. When you shifted your inner state not through force of will, but by connecting with a deep and genuine truth, the love for your family, you began to broadcast a different frequency, a frequency of peace, of coherence, of grace. Your family, your home, they had no choice but to begin to resonate with that new broadcast. You didn't fight the darkness. You turned on a light, and the darkness simply had no place to be. This same law is working in your life right now. The state you carry inside, the rushed anxiety, the low-grade resentment, the quiet fear, it is not contained within your skin. It is shaping your reality. It is informing how people respond to you, what opportunities you see, and what circumstances you attract. The most common mistake is to try to change your state by changing your circumstances. The forgotten wisdom teaches the opposite. Change your state, and your circumstances will have no choice but to change in response. Tonight, instead of speaking a declaration, try this. Sit in stillness, and for 5 minutes connect with a single genuine feeling of gratitude. Not for what you want, but for what you already have. Your breath, the chair holding you, a single good memory. Let that feeling fill you without asking for anything in return. Become a silent broadcast of grace. This is the energy medicine of the ancients. It's not about sending energy, it's about becoming a different kind of energy altogether. You don't need to believe me, your own nervous system will tell you it's true. The quiet that follows will be your proof. I have taught this principle of resonance to 29 people over the last 2 decades. Let me show you how it worked for 5 of them, because the pattern is always the same, even when the lives are completely different. There was a young mother, I'll call her Anya, whose newborn child would not stop crying, not for a day, but for weeks. The healers were baffled. The mother was on the verge of collapse. I didn't give her a remedy for the child. I gave her the instruction of silence. I told her to hold her baby, and instead of desperately trying to soothe him, to simply feel an overwhelming love and acceptance for him, exactly as he was, cries and all, to flood her own body with the feeling of peace. Within 2 hours, the child fell into a deep, restful sleep for the first time in his life. He was not reacting to his own discomfort, but to his mother's panic. When her broadcast changed, his reality changed. There was an old stone mason, Elias, whose hands had become gnarled with arthritis. He could no longer hold his tools. His life's work was over, and a bitter resentment had taken root in his heart. I told him to sit with his hands every morning, and instead of focusing on the pain, to flood them with gratitude for the 50 years of work they had given him, for the cathedrals and bridges they had built. He did this for a month. The pain did not vanish entirely, but it subsided so much that he was able to pick up his carving tools again, to teach his grandson the craft. He changed his relationship with the pain, and so the pain's relationship with him changed. There was a painter, a woman named Inez, who had lost her inspiration. She would stare at a blank canvas for days, her mind a desert. The well of her creativity had run dry, and she was in despair. I told her to stop trying to paint. Instead, I instructed her to go to the market each day and find one thing of exquisite beauty, a piece of fruit, the color of a woman's shawl, the light in a child's eye, and to simply sit with it for 10 minutes, allowing its beauty to fill her with no intention of painting it, just to be a vessel for beauty. A week later, she came to me, her hands stained with pigment, her hinds alive. "It's back," she said. The moment I stopped demanding it, it returned. There was even a timid merchant, terrified of a meeting with a powerful nobleman who could ruin him. His fear was so great he was physically ill. I told him that an hour before the meeting he should find a quiet corner and not rehearse his arguments, but instead cultivate a deep, silent feeling of his own inherent dignity as a child of the eternal witness. Not arrogance, just a quiet, unshakable knowing of his own worth, independent of the outcome. He walked into that meeting not as a beggar but as an equal. The nobleman, expecting a terrified subordinate, was so disarmed by his calm presence that he granted him everything he asked for. Different people, different circumstances, same law. Your inner state dictates your outer world. But there was one person this law seemed to fail. A young scholar who did everything I asked and whose life only got worse. And understanding why will reveal the next and perhaps most crucial layer of this forgotten wisdom. His name was Isaac, a brilliant young man, a scholar of ancient texts who came to me not out of pain, but out of intellectual curiosity. He saw these laws as a system to be mastered, a puzzle to be solved. He was fascinated by the law of resonance and applied it with the discipline of a true academic. He wanted to attract a patron for his work, so he spent an hour every day embodying the feeling of success and scholarly achievement, and it backfired completely. The patron he was courting was suddenly disgraced in a scandal. The library where he worked suffered a fire, and some of his notes were lost. A rival scholar published a paper that preempted his own research. He came to me furious. "This is a lie," he said, his voice tight with controlled rage. "I did exactly what you said. I held the state of success and my world has crumbled." I looked at him, and for the first time I saw the flaw in my teaching. Or rather, the piece I had left out. "Isaac," I asked him, "when you were holding that state of success, what was the underlying emotion? Be honest." He hesitated. Confidence. Certainty. The feeling of accomplishment. And underneath that, I pressed gently. What was driving the desire for success? He was silent for a long time. The intellectual arrogance fell away, and a flicker of something raw and vulnerable showed in his eyes. Fear, he finally admitted. Fear that I am insignificant without it. Fear that my work is meaningless. And there it was, the truth. "You were not broadcasting success, Isaac," I told him. "You were broadcasting a desperate need to be seen as successful. You are trying to use this law as a tool to fill a void within you. But these laws are not tools to get what the ego wants. They are disciplines to align you with what the soul needs. The universe was not punishing you. It was responding to your deepest broadcast, your fear of insignificance. It lovingly dismantled the false structures of success you were trying to build on a foundation of fear so that you might be forced to find your significance elsewhere. This was a profound lesson for me. These laws, these codes, they are amplifiers. They will amplify whatever is at the core of your intention. If your intention is rooted in fear, in lack and a need to prove yourself, you will only create more elaborate circumstances that reflect that fear back to you. This led me to the third code, the one that Isaac needed to learn, the one that moves beyond speaking and feeling. It is the law of recognition. This law states that you do not need to create peace or abundance or love. You only need to recognize that it is already your essential nature, given to you by the source of all that is. The healing is not in the adding of something new, but in the removal of the illusion that it was ever missing. Isaac did not need to achieve significance. He needed to recognize the inherent significance he possessed as a unique expression of the divine. His work was not the source of his value. It was merely a channel for the value he already was. This changes everything. It means the work is not about striving, but about seeing. It is about looking past the story of your life, the story of your wounds, your failures, your fears, and recognizing the immutable, perfect self that was present before that story began. That is the self the Creator made. Everything else is just a costume you've been wearing for so long you've forgotten it's not your skin. But I thought I understood this law. I thought I had mastered it. Until a young woman asked me a question so simple it broke me open and forced me to confront my own shadow. I need to tell you something I have never shared with anyone before. For years, I taught these principles, witnessing the transformations in others. I was the keeper of the wisdom, the guide on the path. And in my quiet moments, a subtle pride took root in my heart. I saw myself as separate as the teacher. But the voice that began all things has a way of humbling us when we need it most. It happened on a rainy afternoon. A young woman, no older than 20, had come to learn. I had just finished explaining the law of recognition, how all we need is already within us, gifted by the divine. She listened with a quiet intensity. And when I was done, she looked at me with eyes that were clear and unburdened by theory, and she asked a simple question. If this is true, she said, why are you still alone? The question landed in the center of my being like a stone dropped into a still pool. The silence in the room became immense. Every clever answer I could have formulated turned to ash in my mouth, because she was right. I had community. I had purpose. But I was alone. I had lived a life walled off from deep, intimate connection, telling myself it was a sacrifice for my work, a noble choice. But her question pierced through that story and struck the raw truth beneath it. The truth was, I was afraid. I was afraid of the messiness of love. I was afraid of being truly seen, of being vulnerable. The old woman in the salt flats had been my only deep connection. And after she passed, I had unconsciously sealed that part of myself away. I used the wisdom as a shield. I was a master of the principles of connection to the divine, but a novice in the art of connection to another human heart. I had no answer for her, at least not one I was ready to admit. I could only look at her and say, that is a question I must live with. Thank you. She had come to me as a student, but in that moment she was my teacher. Her innocent question had revealed my own hypocrisy. I was broadcasting a frequency of guarded self-sufficiency, and my reality was reflecting it back to me perfectly. I was living alone because deep down I had not yet recognized that I was worthy of being loved for who I was, not for what I knew. That moment was a turning point. It forced me to apply these laws not as a teacher but as a desperate seeker myself. It was the beginning of a long, painful, and ultimately beautiful journey of dismantling my own internal fortress. I had to sit in the stillness and truly feel, the ache of my loneliness without trying to fix it. I had to speak a new declaration. I am worthy of love. And it felt like a lie, a terrible lie, for months. But I kept at it. Most importantly, I had to begin the work of recognizing the love that was already present in my life, in the small gestures of kindness from villagers, in the loyalty of a stray dog that had adopted me, in the warmth of the sun on my face. I tell you this not to confess my failings, but to show you that this is not a path for perfect people. It is a path for honest people. These laws are not a magic wand. They are a mirror. They will show you, with perfect, sometimes painful, clarity, the truth of your own inner state. And the moment you see it without judgment, the moment you can look at your own fear or your own pride and say, ah, there you are. That is the moment healing begins. My loneliness was not a punishment. It was a gift. It was a signpost pointing me directly to the part of myself that most needed the Creator's light. Your greatest struggle is doing the same for you, right now. Let me give you the exact process for this. This is the practice that the young woman's question forced me to undertake. It is the core of the law of recognition. It is perhaps the most powerful and the most difficult of the codes because it requires no effort, only a profound shift in perception. Here's what you do. Find your quiet place. Sit in the position of stillness just as I described before, but this time you will not speak a declaration. You will not cultivate a feeling. You will do something far more subtle. Step 1. Identify the story of lack. Bring to mind the problem you are facing. The thing you feel is missing from your life. Is it health? Is it wealth? Is it love? Is it peace? Feel the familiar ache of its absence. This is the story your ego tells you every day. The story that you are broken, lacking, incomplete. Acknowledge this story, don't fight it. Just see it for what it is, a story. Step 2. Ask the question of truth. Now, I want you to ask a quiet question directed not to your mind, but to the deep stillness within you. The question is this: where is the peace I am seeking, already present in this moment? Or, where is the love I am seeking, already present in this moment? Or, where is the abundance I am seeking, already present in this moment? Do not try to answer this question with your intellect. Your mind will say, "It's not here." That's the whole problem. Ignore your mind. Your job is simply to ask the question sincerely, and then to wait, to listen, to watch with your inner senses. Step 3. Notice the evidence. This is the subtle part. You are not looking for the problem to be solved. You are looking for evidence, however small, that the quality you seek is already here. If you are seeking peace, perhaps you will notice the stillness in the room between your breath. That is peace. If you are seeking love, perhaps you will feel the warmth of your own hands clasped in your lap. That is love. If you are seeking abundance, perhaps you will become aware of the air filling your lungs freely and without cost. That is abundance. Most people make this mistake. They look for evidence on a grand scale. They want the estranged lover to call, the money to appear in their account. But the law of recognition works at the level of the seed, not the tree. You must be willing to acknowledge the microscopic presence of what you seek. You will know it's working when you feel a subtle shift inside you. A release of tension, a slight softening around your heart, a feeling of, "Oh, it is here." That usually happens within a few minutes of sincere practice. This is not about pretending your problems don't exist. It is about recognizing that the divine provision you seek is not a future event, but a present reality that you have been trained to overlook. Practice this daily. Identify the story of lack. Ask where its opposite is already present, and train your attention to notice the subtle evidence. This is how you stop begging for what you think you lack, and start acknowledging the infinite grace you have already been given. I have given you the map. Now let me show you what happens when you use it to navigate the most treacherous terrain of all, the temptation to use this power for yourself. Before I share the final key, the one that unites all the others, you need to understand the warning that came with it. Because once you know what I'm about to tell you, you can't unknow it. This knowledge is not a trinket. It is a fire. In the hands of the wise, it warms and illuminates. In the hands of the foolish, it burns. Not everyone should carry this. There was a man, I'll call him Silas. He was clever, charming, and deeply ambitious. He learned these laws from me years ago, and he grasped them faster than anyone I had ever taught. He saw them not as a path to alignment with the Creator, but as a set of levers to control his world. He used sacred speech not to declare truth, but to bend the wills of others to his own. He would speak declarations of his inevitable success in business, and he became wealthy, leaving a trail of ruined partners in his wake. He used the law of resonance not to create peace, but to project an aura of unshakable confidence that made people trust him, even when their instincts screamed otherwise. He used the law of recognition not to find his inherent worth, but to justify his selfish actions, telling himself he was simply claiming the abundance that was his birthright. On the surface, he was a massive success. He had wealth, power, and influence. People envied him, but I saw him once, years after he had stopped seeking my counsel. He was at a town festival, surrounded by people who wanted his favor, but he was utterly alone. His eyes, which had once been sharp and bright with intelligence, were now cold and empty. They were the eyes of a man living in a fortress of his own making, a king ruling over a kingdom of one. The consequence of misusing these laws is not a thunderbolt from heaven. It is far more subtle and far more terrible. When you use these principles to serve the ego, you strengthen the ego. And the ego's greatest talent is creating a sense of separation. Separation from others, separation from the world, and ultimately, separation from the divine hand that gives these laws their power. Silas got everything he thought he wanted, and in the getting he lost the only thing that mattered, the capacity for connection, for joy, for love. He had a full life but an empty soul. That is why I almost didn't share this with you. That is why this wisdom was often transmitted in whispers from teacher to student only when the student's heart was deemed ready. But you have listened this far. You have stayed when others might have left. You have journeyed through the stories of grief and healing, of failure and vulnerability. That tells me something about your heart, and it tells me you are ready for what comes next. You are ready for the master key. Everything I have taught you so far, sacred speech, the silence of resonance, the law recognition, they are all like individual notes in a grand piece of music. They are beautiful and powerful on their own. But the master key is the melody that holds them all together. It's the truth so simple that mystics and sages spent lifetimes searching for it, while it was hidden in the one place they rarely thought to look, in the act of surrender. Let me tell you about a woman named Mara. She was the matriarch of a small village in the high mountains, a place that lived and died by its spring-fed well. One year, a dry season unlike any in living memory descended upon the land. The well slowed to a trickle, and then went dry. The crops withered, the animals grew thin. Fear, for the first time, entered the heart of the village. Mara did everything she knew. She led the village in prayers. She organized work parties to dig deeper, but they only found dust. She sent scouts to search for other water sources, but they returned with grim news. She came to me as a last resort, her face etched with the worry of her people. I have tried everything, she said, her voice heavy. I have declared abundance. I have sat in the silence, holding the feeling of rain. I have tried to recognize the water that must be deep in the earth. Nothing works. We are watching our world die. She had used all the codes. She had done everything right, and it was failing. It was in that moment of complete and utter failure that she became ready for the master key. Mara, I said, you have been trying to command reality. You have been trying to impose your will, even a benevolent will, upon the world. The master key is not about command. It is about consent. It is not about making things happen. It is about allowing them to happen. Allowing what to happen? She asked. Desperate. The will of the one who breathed you into being, I said. The final code is called sacred surrender. It is the act of aligning your personal will so perfectly with the divine will that your desires are no longer your own, but an echo of the Creator's desire for you. You stop telling the universe what you need and you ask with profound humility, what is it that you wish to do through me? This was a terrifying concept for a leader like Mara, a woman used to taking action. It felt like giving up. Go back to your village, I told her. Gather your people at the dry well, but do not pray for rain. Do not ask for water. Do not visualize the outcome you want. Instead, I want you to lead them in a single silent prayer of agreement. The prayer is this: let thy will be done. And as you say it, truly mean it. Surrender your desire for a specific outcome. Surrender your fear of what will happen if the rain doesn't come. Empty yourself of your own agenda and make your entire being a vessel for the divine will, whatever that may be. Become an open channel. She looked at me, a flicker of understanding in her tired eyes. It was the hardest thing I could have asked of her, to release control when control felt like the only thing left. She returned to her village. She gathered the people, young and old, at the edge of the dusty pit that had been their source of life. She explained my strange instruction. There was confusion, doubt, but they trusted her. As the sun began to set, they stood together in a great circle, and a profound silence fell. They were not begging the heavens. They were not demanding a miracle. They were simply opening, releasing, agreeing. They were offering their small, frightened wills back to the source of all will. Mara told me later that in that silence something broke within her. The terrible weight of responsibility she had been carrying lifted. For the first time in months, she felt a sense of peace, a deep trust that was beyond circumstance. She didn't know if it would rain, and for the first time, that was okay. She opened her eyes. The sky was still clear and star-filled. Nothing had changed. Her people began to stir, a low murmur of disappointment rippling through them. But then, an old man at the edge of the well suddenly shouted, pointing not at the sky, but down into the pit. A small, dark patch had appeared on the dusty floor of the well. It grew larger, a seep, then a trickle. By sunrise, the well was a quarterful of fresh, clean water. It had not come from the sky. It had come from deep within the earth. A source they never could have reached, unlocked not by force but by surrender. That is the master key. Sacred surrender. It is not passivity. It is the highest form of action. It is the realization that your power is not in your ability to control the world, but in your willingness to be an instrument for the one who does. When you speak not your words, but the truth that wishes to be spoken through you. When you hold a state of resonance, it is not your peace, but the divine peace that flows through you. When you recognize you are not seeing with your eyes, but with the eyes of the eternal witness itself. What happened to Mara's village is happening to you right now in your own life. You have been digging in the dust, praying for rain from a cloudless sky. The source you seek is not outside of you. It is within. And the way to unlock it is not to demand, but to surrender. To ask, what is the highest good that wishes to emerge here? And then to get out of the way and let it. That's the key. The one that unlocks all the others. Mara discovered it. I discovered it. And now you hold it too. Which brings me to why I am really telling you all of this. You are not just a listener anymore. By hearing these words to their end, by traveling this path with me, you have become something else. You have become a keeper of what was forgotten. Remember what I told you at the very beginning about David, the merchant who lost everything on a Tuesday and reclaimed it by Friday? About the law I taught him that took 3 minutes to explain? You now know that law. You now carry that power. Not because I gave it to you, I couldn't. You carry it because you have remembered something you already knew deep in the bedrock of your soul. This power isn't yours to own. It is yours to steward. This wisdom is not a weapon to get what you want, but a compass to find your way back to who you truly are. Always remember, you are the echo, not the voice. You are the instrument, not the hand. But an instrument in the hands of the divine can reshape worlds. Use it carefully. Use it with reverence. Use it well. Tonight, before you sleep, I want you to do one thing. Place a hand over your heart. Close your eyes and whisper these words into the quiet of your room. I am a vessel. That is all. That is all. Just that. Don't ask for anything. Don't expect anything. Simply declare your willingness to be used for a purpose greater than your own fear. And then notice what happens in the next 3 days. Notice the subtle shifts, the quiet synchronicities, the gentle unfolding of grace. You will understand then in your own life why I spent 40 minutes telling you all of this. The seal is broken. The scroll is read. And you are now a keeper of what was forgotten, not hidden, just forgotten, until now, until you